Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest stream from IBM Developer. We're coming to you on all sorts of different platforms today: YouTube, Twitch, Crowdcast. I think there's somebody subscribed on a punch card reader. It's great to see everybody here, and I believe we have all of your comments syndicated into our one platform. So all throughout our presentation today, feel free to ask any questions. Lizzie and I want to make this as interactive as possible. And I see that we've got a little bit of a technical issue here, so I'm just going to troubleshoot this while I introduce Lizzie Siegel, who is our developer advocate from Twilio. Lizzie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Dave. I know we've done this a few times, but this is different. I love the intro. Looks very smooth, very professional. Not that I would expect anything less, but it's looks good.
Yeah, no, we're fancy today. We're fancy. And this is actually the third part of our three-part series of IBM and Twilio technologies working together. And this is based on a lab that Lizzie and I wrote together about building a virtual agent in JavaScript with Twilio Autopilot and IBM Watson Natural Language Understanding. I should be able to say the title of this because, like I said, we built this together. Yeah, so I'm really excited about this lab today, and just a little bit of housekeeping. Like I said, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. We'll try to reply to them as quickly as possible. If you do want to see more content like this, feel free to subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on, YouTube or Twitch or Crowdcast. There should be a little subscription button there. And we will last for probably a little bit under an hour today. And then if you'd like to get in touch with each of us offline, I'll drop my social, my Twitter handle in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me and ask me any questions. My DMs are open. And Lizzie, I don't know what your social media policy is.
I think my DMs are closed, but you can send a DM and it's not sent, but it's in a different inbox.
Yeah.
So I check those occasionally.
Okay. So feel free to ask Lizzie a question and maybe she'll get back to you before you've solved it yourself.
I actually check Stack Overflow more often, the Twilio tag. So if you have a question, you can also tag Twilio on Stack Overflow.
Oh, delightful. Yeah, I love it. And thank you, Tony, in the comments for mentioning that we are not on Crowdcast right now. That's right. We do have some technical difficulties with the stream keys on Crowdcast, so I apologize for that, but hopefully we'll be running very shortly. But in the meantime, we do have the link for you to sign up for IBM Cloud. Hopefully, Gabriella can get that up on the screen, but I'll also paste that in the chat. That's going to allow you to create your Watson Natural Language Understanding service. And then we will also have a link to be able to create your Twilio account a little bit later. Oh, and it looks like we are now live on Crowdcast. Delightful. Glad to hear it. So let's get started with a short presentation, and then we can jump right into the lab portion. So hi, I'm Dave. Lizzie, I don't think I have a slide for you, Lizzie, so I think you'll have to introduce yourself. But Lizzie and I used to do a lot of the same stuff where we'd go to meetups and conferences and do presentations, stuff like that. And then these days, it's all virtual, even though we're just a mile apart from each other in San Francisco. And I'm looking forward to doing more in-person events at some point soon. Lizzie, would you like to talk about Twilio's approach to dev advocacy?
I can't beat your bears, Dave. I love it so much. But here at Twilio, we are fans of serving developers, whether that's in person at meetups, conferences, webinars. I'm trying to think of what else events could be like. I
High
forget.
fives on the street.
High fives on the street. Stack Overflow. Oh, I'm blinking. You put me on the spot. Blog post content, documentation. You can find some of us on Twitch.
I need 3 or 4 more, Lizzie. I need 3 or 4 more. No, I'm just kidding.
Pursuing. Oh my gosh. Blog posts, documentation. Okay, well, it depends. We do some crazy stuff.
Well, here's some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. I just wanted to mention briefly chatbots. So today we're going to be working with interactive chatbots, and why should we care about chatbots, right? Also an introduction to natural language processing, and then we'll jump right into the lab. So fairly short presentation, and then a fairly interactive lab. So first of all, sign up and get started. Feel free to use the link right there in the chat and also on your screen and also in your brain. We're transmitting it directly into your web browser right now. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have the ability to do that, thankfully. But sign up for your IBM Cloud account, and then that will let you create your Watson NLU service in a little bit. So why chatbots? Well, chatbots are a huge and growing area for artificial intelligence and machine learning. The projected market for chatbot technologies by 2024 is expected to be $9.4 billion. The compound annual growth rate of this market is actually really fast, especially in North America. It's a little bit slower in some other geographies. And this comes from a Business Insider survey. Grandview Research says technologies such as artificial intelligence, IoT, and APIs, among others, are evolving at a rapid speed. Chatbots are integrated with all of these technologies to offer enhanced operations, driving market demand. AI and audio speech-based chatbots are expected to account for the largest market share in the future. And so a lot of these things that you see mentioned here are things that you would really associate Twilio with, right? You're talking about IoT, you're talking about APIs, you're talking about artificial intelligence, chat. And so these map really well to a lot of Twilio's capabilities and also to a lot of IBM's capabilities. So that's why we were super excited to do this integration. So just to give you a bit of an overview from sort of like a domain background or a technical background, NLP is a branch of AI that deals with the interaction between computers and humans using natural language. And so this is why it's relevant to chatbots. The objective of NLP is to read, decipher, understand, and make sense of human languages in a manner that's valuable and meaningful. Most NLP techniques rely on machine learning to derive meaning from human languages. And so one of the things that we're actually going to be doing today, we have sort of like a triple approach to AI or machine learning or like deriving meaning from things. And so one is this naive Bayesian classifier. And so this is maybe the simplest way that you could derive meaning from some language. And then using the Twilio products and IBM products, you get a lot more effective reading of meaning from language. But these naive classifiers are super, super scalable. And so we'll actually be able to use NPM to pull in a classifier and actually run it on a sample data set just in the browser using, I guess technically it's running on a Twilio server somewhere, but it's effectively instantaneous. So 3 ways that we're going to approach adding sort of smart technology into our applications. One is with Watson natural language processing, natural language understanding. Another is with Twilio Autopilot, which allows you to easily classify user responses into predefined buckets to identify a user's intent. And then the third is with naive Bayesian classifier. And Lizzie, do you want to add anything to that from the Twilio side of things?
I was lolling a bit. I was laughing when you said like derive meaning because that sounded very philosophical. I was trying to think of like, how do we derive meaning, Dave?
Yeah, and I see that somebody in the chat was saying that this is a mouthful, and it's like, yeah, it is. I think people in the audience are trying to derive meaning from some of the things that I was just saying in these slides. That's totally reasonable, but I think it'll become a lot clearer once we step into the lab. So hopefully at this point, Gabriella can share a link to the lab. And once you get that link, you'll be able to get to this blog post that Lizzie and I created. And this is sort of I would say maybe a slightly clickbaity title that we came up with about which JavaScript
like it's
framework.
A bad thing.
we identified your JavaScript framework and you would not believe the consequences. It could be worse, right?
Yeah.
but building a smart bot to find out using Watson natural language understanding. And so the table of contents, this is what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to create our Watson NLU service. We're going to create a Twilio function. We're going to call our Watson NLU service from our Twilio function. We're going to create a chatbot with Twilio Autopilot. We're going to link it all together and make the chatbot smart with Watson NLU. So it seems like a lot. It is a lot, but we're going to get through it today. And if we don't, then you'll be able to get through it afterwards, because we put all the screenshots and documentation right here in the blog post. So this, let me know in the chat if you do not have access to this blog post. Hopefully you were able to follow the link and you do. And I see that it's already been shared to all the different platforms. Thank you, Gabriella, for helping us out in the background there. You might need to add an HTTP to the front of that to make sure that it's clickable, but hopefully all the platforms are like smart enough that it doesn't really matter. So you've created your IBM Cloud account. You've created your Twilio account, or you're in the process of doing each of those things. Now I'm going to walk you through creating your Watson natural language understanding service. So once you've created your cloud account, you're going to be confronted with this dashboard, and probably you will have zero confronted. Yeah, because it's like a lot, you know. You're looking at it, there's like a little map of the world down here. You're like, I'm just in one part of the world, like I don't know, I don't really know. But the only thing you really need to worry about is this create resource button, this blue create, this nice friendly create resource button. And when you click on that, and one of the nice things about our control panel is if you have a slow internet connection, it gives you a little time to think about everything that you've clicked on. So my internet connection is pretty slow today. So you're able to scroll down through all the different services that you can create. And just a little hint, if you are going to be using sort of like, if you're more interested in prototyping stuff and you want to use the free stuff, you can actually filter the services down by light and free plans. So if you just want to use the, get access to some of the stuff and just show it to your boss, or just do it for your own educational purposes, you can click on light and it'll actually filter down all the different plans so that only the light tier plans are available. But the easiest way here is probably just to search. If we search for natural language understanding, or NLU, then our NLU service will pop up. And you'll see that we can set a number of different parameters for it, like location. And the most important of these is probably the pricing plan. And with the pricing plan, you want to make sure that you're on the light pricing plan. And that gives you a restricted instance. But the nice thing is that that instance is going to be free forever. A few caveats: if you don't use it within, I think, 30 days, then they'll actually spin down your NLU instance. You can only do 30,000 NLU items per month, but this is probably enough to prototype out something, to build a simple integration, and that's the goal of our workshop today. So we'll make sure that our light plan is selected. We'll scroll down, we'll see that it's created a service name for us, and then we'll read and agree to the license agreement, because we always read the entire license agreement and don't just tick the box. And then we'll click create, and it'll actually spin up our instance for us. And so these are all of the steps that are outlined in the blog post here. We get a little congratulations and a little emoji party here at the end of this step. Delightful. And then also we'll be able to jump in and get the service credentials. And the most important thing in the service credentials are the API key and URL. So once this service is created, on the left-hand side here, we can click service credentials, pop this little down arrow, and you could see an API key and a URL. This is obviously private. You shouldn't, for example, share your API key and URL on a live stream on YouTube, Twitch,
Who would do that?
podcast. I know, just terrible from a security perspective. But also, luckily, this is a light service that gets cut off after 30,000 requests, and I'll delete it right after the workshop. Andy asked, do we need a Twilio account? To do this lab, you do need a Twilio account. To use Watson NLU by itself, you don't. But why would you use it by itself? You should create a Twilio account, right, Lizzie?
Yeah. I mean, we like to increase account usage as well, like
yeah.
IBM and Dave.
Yeah, let's get Lizzie promoted, So
Dave,
Yeah,
But
go
I
ahead.
also wanted to say, you're clearly not in sales because you said something about like, this will not cost any money and you do not need to pay any money because it's like there's good features. And even if it's true, I feel like sales would be like trying to get people to swipe that credit card.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about the light services is even if you put down a credit card, you won't get charged. You know, it's not like a free service where it's like free up to a certain point and then it starts racking up the bill. With the light tier services, it's just free. If you do, by the way, if you do end up creating a service and you want to get billing notifications, then there is actually a way to do that under billing and usage, under manage. So if you do end up creating something that is paid and you're building a prototype for it, make sure that you set up billing notifications for yourself, because I would hate for you to create something and then 3 months later realize like, oh my gosh, I was getting charged $2 a month for this for the last few months. You know, I hate it when that happens.
Okay, for some reason, Google Cloud was like, I thought I canceled all my Google Cloud projects and they charged me like $100 last month. And I was like, yeah. So I had to like check all my projects and I still don't know what it was. So I just was like, oh.
That's why I don't use Google Cloud. No, I'm just kidding. We actually do have a workshop coming up where we're working with AWS and Azure. We don't do as much with Google, but I think it's just like based on customer demand. I'm sure at some point we will.
Yeah.
And Andy says, where is the blog? I missed the blog link to see the lab steps. Oh, Gabriella, could we share the blog link again? Because that is sort of like the key sign up link that everybody wants to get to here. And I will also copy and paste it into the, or actually, you know what? I can't paste it into the chat, but I can paste it into the Crowdcast chat. So I'm going to do that. Excuse me for a second while I do housekeeping for Andy. Oh, you know what? I am getting an error message from Crowdcast. Oh, that's delightful. Okay.
YouTube, YouTube doesn't make it like really clickable. But
yeah, thanks, YouTube. It's because you said all that stuff about Google Cloud and Google owns YouTube. So now nothing's clickable. Thanks, Lizzie.
How do they know?
So,
and then Twitch is clickable because it's owned by Amazon. You're like,
say something nice about AWS. So shall we jump through the Twilio sign-up process as well?
We shall jump through it.
Delightful. So I believe that the URL is right here. I can copy this into Crowdcast here, and we can also share it on all the different platforms. But this link is in the blog post. So as soon as you're in the blog post, you'll be able to get to this Twilio sign up link. I believe with that referral link, you get like $5 credit or something. Is that right, Lizzie?
15.
15! Whoa!
It's like $5, Dave. You get sound cheap.
So yeah, but I believe for our lab, we actually won't use any Twilio products that require like paid usage. It'll all be free.
Yeah, I believe so.
So these screenshots, I might be a little bit out of date. Actually, I think there was a UI refresh of the Twilio dashboard since we took these screenshots.
There was, but it's pretty similar, I think.
Yeah. So step 2, we're going to step into functions. So I've got my Twilio dashboard up here, and I've actually pinned a few things on the left-hand side here. I remember this was really confusing the first time I used it, but now it's much better.
It took me so long to know that like you could pin products.
Yeah. And by the way, I took this UI and I sent it to our IBM Cloud team as a recommendation for usage. So if you see this pop up in IBM Cloud, then you can sue us. No, I'm just kidding. So if you don't have stuff pinned on the left-hand side, then I think you do explore products, right? Yeah. And then you can find all the different products. If you click this little pin here, then it'll actually pin it to the sidebar over here so that you have a little quick way to access that. And so we'll click on functions here.
And functions is the Twilio serverless environment for web apps. I love serverless. I'm just like, why spin up a server if you don't have to?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the nice things that I like about Twilio functions is that you can actually include arbitrary NPM packages into your function as a dependency. So it's so much nicer than just running some JavaScript code, because as we know, oh my gosh, it's really bright. I should close these things. I got like lines over my face. As we know, nobody programs in a vacuum, and you always need third-party code in your application, and so Twilio Functions makes it super simple to do that.
It might be because we're advocates, but like I love third-party code. I love external libraries. I love relying on other people's uptime.
So I believe inside functions, we're going to create a service.
Yes. And I think this was different from what we did back then, because there's the old functions, which is the classic.
Oh, should we go through functions classic?
You can do services.
Okay, we'll do a service.
I honestly don't like the new way, but it's the one that they're pushing, you know.
Oh, it can't have spaces, I guess. Okay, there we go. So I created a service. Oh, such a nice UI. I like this UI.
It took me time to get used to, but I like it now overall, the UI.
Nice. And then we go into, we're not going to do the welcome function. Are we going to add a function?
You could add one. You could change the welcome name. I should change the welcome name and just like edit the code in there.
So this is rename. Oh, I guess we could just use welcome. Yeah. I don't think we named the function here, did we?
I don't.
Oh, awesome. Okay, let's do awesome.
Oh, I was actually looking at the blank. I was like, oh.
And then if it's going to be publicly accessible, or I guess, yeah, do we want it to be protected or public?
Okay, I honestly don't see much of a difference. I usually don't touch that, and it always works. Yeah.
All right. And then we are going to, this is like the default function, and we don't want to use access control. Is there a way to change that in the new UI, or is that the public-private thing?
I think that's public-private now.
Okay, cool.
I would also click enable live logs.
Ooh.
Enable.
Love it.
For some reason, I feel like this should be automatic. Like it should automatically be enabled. Because for a while I was like, yeah. I asked in the help functions channel, I was like, for some reason I print stuff out and it doesn't print. And someone was like, did you enable live logs? And I was like, what? Oh, that was a big facepalm moment for me.
So I think we can just return a random string to show that it's working, right?
Yes.
And then we deploy all?
Yes.
This is why I have Lizzie here to walk us through the Twilio side of stuff. I see we have a question in Crowdcast. Can you run curl inside a Twilio function? That's a good question. Could you curl from like an arbitrary third-party URL? I don't think I've ever done that.
You could hit, if you copy URL, you could hit the function. I do make a lot of HTTP requests, which we will do in this function, in this service as well, with a node library.
Okay, nice.
If you go to dependencies, I think they used to include Axios. Like Axios was one dependency that was automatically included. Nice. I'm not sure it still is in this new functions UI.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so one thing Lizzie mentioned down here, dependencies and environment variables, and we're going to be using each of these later in the lab, but this is where you can actually import NPM modules into your application, and then environment variables is where you can add stuff like API keys, and I think that's the next step in our lab, actually. So now we can copy this URL to the function, and this is just going to go to my Stack Overflow page. But you can see that we have, I'll just zoom in on this so you can see it. We got back our string,
Hello.
right? So it returned hello from this function URL. So sweet.
Yeah.
It's working already. So we've proved that Twilio functions work. So now we can go through and call our Watson natural language understanding service from our Twilio function. And by the way, if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to list them in the comments section. Always easier to resolve ambiguities earlier rather than later. So we have our API key and URL that everyone copied down from my screen in the previous section so that they could totally massacre my Watson natural language understanding 30,000 free queries this month. And we are going to add those into Twilio, but we're going to change the name or the key name to Watson API key and Watson URL. So the way that we'll do that is we will go into environment variables and just add a couple. Oh, I did that wrong. I need to paste the actual thing. And so then we'll go back to our Watson service page and grab the API key.
Oh, it looks cool there. Like,
hey, it worked.
Surprise.
I mean, I knew it all along, Lizzie.
That's what happens when you do it live. Oh. So often I'm like, I think this will work. It should work. And then it doesn't work. And I'm like, but it should.
Yeah. And today it does. So we've added our Watson API key and our Watson URL. And this will allow us to call those values inside our code without having the secrets pasted in our code. So just a best practice overall. And then on the same screen, you'll see dependencies, which we just talked about. And so we're going to add IBM Watson as a package. And this is actually a separate screen because it's the new version of functions. But we're going to use IBM Watson as a dependency. So let's do that inside our Twilio functions. I think we're just going to say whatever version.
Yeah, I usually do asterisk because I'm lazy, but
okay.
And now they were like, "Why do you do asterisk? You could mess some stuff up." I was like, "I don't want to look it up though."
I see we've got another question from Andy. How can I access the lab page showing the steps? So maybe I'll just copy and paste the URL one last time into Crowdcast. But there are a couple links, and I see we have it on the screen right now. Thank you, Gabriella. So this is the URL that you'll go to access the lab page. And I can probably make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see it. So this is the code that we're going to paste into our Twilio function. And so I can go over this a little bit. So we're going to use the Twilio function sort of context here. It's going to export this function out for us to use. We're going to require IBM Watson. We're going to pull out the natural language understanding SDK and the IAM authenticator so that we can authenticate with IBM Cloud. And then we're going to create a little JSON object, analyze params, and we're just going to say, go to Google News and give us all of these features. So these are different features that you can request from the Watson NLU service. There are more details on the IBM Watson NLU. There's actually a demo that you can use. So just really briefly, we can go through this just to see how Watson NLU works with an example sort of like large public data set and how it can gather meaning or data based off of a much larger data set. So here's some sample industry text from the legal field. And so if we click analyze, it'll send it out to Watson NLU and it'll get back, it'll say, we've identified these entities in this text. We've identified these keywords with a particular level of relevance. So higher, closer to 1 means more relevance. We've identified these concepts. And we've also identified relationships, and in this case, no relationships. But if we go back to one that actually does have some data and click on JSON here, then you can see this is the JSON that we'll be getting back. So we send Watson NLU some JSON saying this is what we want, and then it sends us back JSON that fits that format. So in this case, we're telling it, I want everything. Give me everything that you want, or give me everything that you get. We're not saying, limit it to 3 items or anything like that. We're just saying, give me everything. So then we're passing that into NLU, and then we are returning the results. So, and also this is available on GitHub if you want to copy it from there. But let's copy this and paste it into our function. Nice. And then I think we'll do deploy all.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Good time for a sip of a beverage.
What are you drinking? I've been admiring the color.
This is Coca-Cola. It's a local independent beverage that we make here in San Francisco, and it's 0 sugar.
I mean,
So
a
it's the new-
culture, I see.
Yes, that's right. And I see we have a question in Crowdcast. If I have a Twilio account, is the promo code will work or only for new accounts? I think the promo code only works for new accounts, but all the stuff that we're doing in the lab today doesn't require any sort of like financial commitment. So using your old account should work fine. Does that sound right, Lizzie?
That does. But I will also make a promo code for new accounts just in case.
Ooh.
So thank you for tuning in today.
Okay, cool. So we've deployed it to our environment. Let's see if we can copy the URL, or I guess we already have the URL here, and run it again. So at this point, our function, instead of just returning, let me zoom out a little bit. Instead of just returning the string hello, is actually reaching out to our Watson NLU service, getting some response from it, and then returning that response to our browser. So right now, the Twilio function is not really useful because we could have just done this ourselves, but it is storing our API key and our URL securely and returning the data to the end user. So now we'll be able to actually use this data for good with Twilio Autopilot. And so you can see this is just parsing live Google News stuff. So it's usually a little bit depressing.
Oh my gosh, the Waukesha Christmas parade, I saw that. Mass robbery attempts, oh no.
Yeah.
Department store, booster updates. David, do you have your booster yet?
I do, yeah. And I am thinking now I should really choose a different URL to parse and get insights from rather than the news, because the news is so depressing. I see we have a question in Crowdcast. Do I have to lock my phone number if I use it for Twilio WhatsApp API, or can a virtual number be used here? So I know that's not related to the content of this session, but Lizzie, do you happen to know about using a phone number for Twilio WhatsApp API?
I don't really understand that question, but I think the answer is you have to fill out a form in order to use a specific phone number for WhatsApp.
Okay, so there is a process that's defined for Twilio to use a phone number for WhatsApp. Okay, cool.
I've never done
Thank
that
you for the question.
I've never done that because it takes time. So they always give me the same number to use for WhatsApp. If that makes sense.
So the rest of the blog post here in this section is just going through all the stuff that we already talked about. We're pulling the Watson API key on Watson URL that we defined. It's talking about the analyze params. And then we're getting the JSON back. Awesome. So now, step 4, creating a chatbot with Twilio Autopilot. So this is where we really get into the chatbot side of things, right? Like this is where we get into the whole market of, billions of dollars that's exploding in popularity. Everyone wants to use chatbots, and Twilio Autopilot is a cool product that lets you spin up a chatbot, like a smart chatbot, fairly easily.
And this is where this bot is going to take over the world. It's going to take our jobs, Dave.
Well, couldn't come soon enough because I need a vacation. So let's.
Yes, you do.
So I think we need to go into the Twilio Autopilot side of things. So let's see if I can get back into my list of stuff, and I'll open a new tab Or will I? No, I won't. I'll just click into Autopilot. And I'll say build a bot and start from scratch. And it looks like, oh, I've already got a service created. So I dig into that service. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm in functions. Oh, Lizzie. It's so I have no excuse for messing up like this. But yeah, I'm gonna build a bot.
It's Monday morning.
It is Monday, everybody. Welcome to Monday. And I'll just do it myself, right? Oh, I can't. Oh yeah, here we go. Start from scratch. Ha 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 ha.
Oh.
Lizzie's bot, and I can make a friendly name.
Oh, the bot is awesome.
I'm trying to build up the bot's confidence. It's important to have a confident bot. Yes. So by default, it creates some tasks for the bot. And so in this sort of UI here, I see that there are different numbers of samples for each one. So there's a fallback option, there's a greeting option, there's a goodbye option, there's a collect fallback. And for each of these, you can actually train a new model to identify the user's incoming text and automatically silo it into the correct response. And I see somebody mentioned in the chat, I tried to get to Twilio and a little confused, and it's a little scary. Yeah, sorry about that. I mean, I actually really like the Twilio interface, but I've used it a few times. I think it's always hard when you make a user interface for so many different products to make it accessible, but also powerful. So Tony, hopefully you're able to follow us along at some point. So for each of these tasks, you can actually click on program, and then inside program, I'm just staying on this page. And did my browser break the Twilio UI?
That is a possibility.
Let me try to do a refresh here.
It does sometimes take a bit to load.
It's thinking. There we go. Nice. And so you can actually, you can go into the program side, but then you can also go into the train task side, right? Where you can give it samples of what input you're expecting from the user in order for that task to execute. And Lizzie, is my vocabulary totally off on this?
Your vocabulary is very good, Dave. So task is kind of like what you want the bot to do. So for this greeting task, you can make it say hello or something, or introduce the bot. And
these are options that, like, if a user says this, we want the bot to greet them back, right?
Yes. These are kind of like triggers, like message triggers.
And so, like, for example, what's up? What does up? What can you do? Hi, hey. And then, I mean, we should have a Northern California greeting. Hello, good morning, right? Because that's what all of us say here. And so we can add that. So now we have 17 samples. And so now we'll have to rebuild the model. So the Twilio Autopilot actually uses a machine learning model to be able to map people's responses into these different tasks. So we'll rebuild the model. And this could take up to a few minutes to run, more if you have sort of like, and there we go. So it's built and it's up to date. So these are the different tasks.
Hello, good morning is added.
Hello, good morning is added. Okay, so we created a new bot in the lab. It's called Watson Bot. We called it Lizzie's Awesome Bot. And now we're going to add a new task. So in addition to saying hi to everybody and saying goodbye to everybody, we're going to create a task called Take JS Survey.
Mm-hmm. And this will ask a series of questions to the user, and then we'll collect their input. I love collecting input. Well, I guess the bot does it. The bot does it. Lizzie's awesome bot.
And so I guess we want to add a handful of phrases that will indicate that the user wants to take the survey after we click train here for Take JS Survey. So we'll just click train. We'll get it, I believe, an empty list this time. another opportunity to have a sip of beverage.
I'm not gonna lie. For a hot second, I thought that was a beer before you said it was Coke. Like,
no wonder I'm having so much trouble copying and pasting. Okay, so what would people say to trigger the task, take the JavaScript survey, right? So maybe if a user was interacting with your chatbot through an IVR system or on a website or through an app or whatever the medium is, what kind of intents would they have to express in order for you to say, oh yeah, they want to take the survey, right? So maybe like, I want to take the survey.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a synonym for survey. Questionnaire.
Oh yeah.
Not quite a quiz. Almost like a quiz.
I don't think this is how you spell questionnaire.
Double N.
Double N.
Maybe double N. Maybe one N. I'm honestly not positive.
That could be. We could do misspellings as other options.
Yeah. Will the ML model on the back end like recognize it anyways? Probably. Maybe. Hopefully. Perhaps.
Just Northern California, we have our own way of speaking, and so it wants us to put in a bunch of samples, but I think that we can build it with fewer than 10 samples, right, Lizzie?
It's recommended to have, I think, 10 to get like the orange to be green, but we can also push the boundaries of what we think the bot can do in an experiment. Asking about JavaScript.
Oh, it's green. Okay, good. I'm going to build the model.
Okay, great. Once it's green,
once we create different tasks and we train it with a bunch of different data, it'll get easier and easier for the bot to identify the meaning of all the different people who interact with it. So we are done with the samples, and I think we want to switch to program task at this point. Let's just go back to our blog post. We switch back to task, and in this screen, we will write the JSON that is going to instruct the Twilio bot how to ask the user questions. And so what we're going to do is we're going to remember the point of this lab is that we're going to match a user with the JavaScript framework that is best for them, right? And I see that I am now getting notifications, so let me turn those off. Forever.
Forever. No more notifications ever.
No more notifications ever. Okay. So in this screen, we'll use this JSON. And so this is a Twilio specific JSON. And it basically lets you say, what questions do you want to ask the user? And then what kind of answers do you want to reply? And so let me copy all of this. And by the way, this is just like, oh, sorry, what was that, Lizzie?
So your Autopilot task needs to have JSON, and it will always have the actions array. There's multiple Autopilot actions. You can just have a plain say to speak out something. You can have like, we'll ask the series of questions, and then takes a questions array. You should name the collect flow, ask the questions, and then name each question. So you can reference the questions and the flow in JavaScript or something else.
Yes, yes. And then on complete, like after it's done asking the questions, it's going to paste all of, or it's going to not paste. I mean, computers don't paste. They use APIs. Sorry. Monday. It's going to redirect, and it's going to send all of that data as a payload to this URL. And Lizzie, this doesn't look like a properly formatted URL. I feel like maybe we'll have to replace this with something.
Probably with an actual URL.
And I think we have instructions here. And this is the URL to your Twilio function that you created in step 3. So let's copy that URL, which we have in this other browser. And we will paste it into our redirect. So this is where we're linking up the Twilio Autopilot with the function that we created previously.
Yes.
And now I believe that in here we're actually going to redo the function, and because right now the function just goes to Google News and returns bad news JSON, and so we're going to change it to actually do a few other things. So let's go back to our function, and we're going to make it smart with Watson NLU. So we're saved here. Just double check. Model's up to date. Okay, let's get out of Autopilot. Go back to functions. Oh, let's go back to functions. Okay, go back to our Lizzie's lab function. JSON acronym, I see as a question, as a JavaScript object notation. Very, very nice way to move data between systems. It's really easy to include it directly into your code and access variables and objects and arrays and stuff like that. It's a limited subset of JavaScript, and much nicer than XML. No offense to XML peeps out there. So we are going to add one more dependency, which is whichx. This is a very simple naive Bayesian classifier. If the maintainer of this module is on the stream, I misspoke, and it's a very complicated classifier, and you're amazing because I use it in all of my labs. Thank you very much.
I love it so much. I'm so glad you showed me it, Dave. Whichx. What a module. What a module.
All right, so we added our dependency here. Let's go back to the lab here. And then we're going to go to manage, and we're going to paste this code, and it's a lot more code. So I'll open it in another tab here. Oh my gosh. Oh, and it's tiny text too. Never paste tiny text code that people tell you to paste. It's always, they're making it tiny because they're trying to hide stuff. But in the blog post, it goes over exactly what we're pasting in, and so I'll go through it here live. So we're basically using the Twilio function context again. We're doing the same authentication with Watson using our credentials that we have in the Twilio function secrets environment variables. We're instantiating our whichx npm function. We're creating a list of frameworks: Angular, React, Vue, Ember, Backbone, and we're doing a little description of each one. Then we're actually going to do a very, very quick instantiation of whichx, and we're adding the labels for all the different frameworks. And then we're actually just going to add a bunch of lowercase data to match the different frameworks. The analyze parameters that we're sending to Watson have changed a little bit. We're still asking for everything, but we're actually going to limit it to 3 keywords. So we're saying, hey, we only want to get 3 keywords back from all the text that we are sending to you. So we're going to collect a bunch of data from the user, and we're going to ship all of that data to Watson NLU. So the text of your responses is going to determine which JavaScript framework you are. And then we're going to say what we detected when we get it back from Watson NLU and the results of our analysis. And we're going to send that back to Twilio Autopilot. So lots of code, little scary. Sorry if anybody is scared by this, but it's mostly JSON. So it should be easy to modify.
Dave, I'm always impressed by your use of reduce.
Yeah. Is this the one where we tried to do no for loops?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that just everything is like super weird and almost like functional. Yeah, I didn't want any for loops in this code, so there aren't any. So it looks weird, but I like it.
It looks so clean.
So we'll go back into our function, and we will replace it with all of this MapReduce nonsense that I wrote. And by the way, feel free to edit, all of this stuff to change it up. Hopefully it's a little friendly to edit, even though there aren't any for loops. Yeah, this might cause somebody to have an aneurysm, but, just breathe, have a sip of beverage.
I've been writing some Airtable scripts, and I have used so many for loops, and I think, Dave, you'd be like, oh, this is so ugly. Like
Yeah.
too many for eaches.
I mean, I wouldn't say it to your face.
Oh.
I would just say it to all of our mutual friends. No, I'm just kidding. For loops can be so much faster, so much more efficient. Okay, so this is saved. We're going to click deploy. Let's just go back to our blog post where it's described much better. And then at this point, we will be able to, it says we're done, but we should still probably test it with Twilio Autopilot. All right, so it is deployed. Let's go back to our Autopilot. So we're switching back to a different Twilio product here.
So many products, so much switching.
How do you do your job, Lizzie?
I honestly don't know.
Well, figure it out and tell your boss. Okay, so Lizzie's bot. Nice. So we have our take.js survey. So we can actually use the simulator. Is that right? To start
I was thinking the
messing around with the
simulator.
bot?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways to integrate Autopilot with sort of user interactive context, right? So it could be in an app, it could be a little modal thing on a website, it could be phone call, text message, whatever it is. This is just a way to troubleshoot your bot by having a little user interface inside the Twilio console browser control panel thingy, whatever you call it.
You could also buy a Twilio phone number and configure it with your bot. Under channels, you would see like a URL, and then you would plug that into your Twilio phone number. But I like the simulator; it's a lot faster.
So we said hello, good morning, and we triggered our greeting task. So already this is working swimmingly. And then next we want to trigger our JavaScript survey task, right? So let's try to trigger it with some text that we didn't actually include in our instructions, right? Like, I want to take the JavaScript survey log.
I do want to take it. That's good.
And so we can see that it triggered the task take.js survey, right? Pretty sweet. And now it's going to ask us a bunch of questions. So, hi, I'm the IBM Twilio sentiment analysis bot. Tell me about your programming habits. First, what do you think of programmers who use a graphical IDE like VS Code as opposed to Vim or Emacs? So, I mean, what do you think? Should we be really nice or should we be like really mean today? It's Monday morning. I feel like we could go either way. Should we throw it open to the attendees and ask them if we should give nice responses or mean responses? Like, what is everyone feeling? Should we wake up and choose anger, or should we should we go with being nice?
Let's ask the attendees. I was thinking we could like switch off like nice and then not nice.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good way. Yeah. Any preference out there in comment land? Nice, please. All right. The nices have it. So we're not gonna be mean to people. We're not gonna do the standard programmer thing of forming a little tribe and somebody says be nice about everything but Vim being wrong.
I feel like that's something of a cop-out too.
Okay, so we'll say, what do you think of programmers who like graphical IDE like VS Code as opposed to Vim or Emacs? Well, all programmers are great and we should respect their choices as long as they make themselves productive.
Aww.
That's nice, right? All right.
That is so nice.
That's going to ask us another question. Some developers contribute to open source projects, but others submit documentation, whereas others submit documentation patches or find bugs or ask things to be fixed. What do you think of programmers who don't contribute back to open source projects in some way? And remember, we're being nice, right? Specifically being nice. And so I think we'll say,
you do not need to contribute to open source projects. You're still a real programmer, even if you just work on your own theme. Who needs community? Okay, don't say that. Who needs community?
Community is awesome if you choose to participate. All right. People can be very proud of their GitHub contribution chart, which is the visual representation of how much code they've committed each day. Should this be a point of pride for programmers? Let's be nice again, and we'll say, hey, whatever makes you feel good and accomplished
Aww.
is great for you.
Yeah. I should have had my GitHub contributions mug today.
So, should brackets should brackets be on the same line of code or on the new line? What is your take on the subject? Maybe we'll say like just agree with your team.
I am a staunch same line. I think it looks weird when it's on a new line, personally. But everyone has their own opinions. There's no right answer.
In the chat, just wanting to learn cool tools whenever available. All right.
Oh.
Last question. A new programming hire joined your team. As they start to work on their code, you realize that instead of tabs, they're using spaces. What do you do to them? Be as graphic as possible. I think, and remember, we're being nice, so we're going to say, pat them on the head. And actually, wait, we want to have consent. So we
I was thinking that's kind of condescending too.
Say nice things to them and help educate them on your company's coding standards. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody was nice all the time? Like, this would be delightful.
This would be.
All right, so look at this. So it took our answers, it sent it out to Watson NLU, and it says, we detected positive sentiments and identified the keywords open source projects, real programmer, and programmers. Your JavaScript framework is Ember. You have the vibe and backing of a supportive community and a well-designed ecosystem. Aw, isn't that cute?
That is so cute. That is very nice.
So just to clarify what we did there, we gathered some input from a user, we classified it, we sent the data out to Watson NLU, we got back all these results about how we classified all of this information, and then we displayed it back to the user in the same context that they talk to us. In this case, it was a web-based chatbot, but it could also be text message, could also be a phone call. And I see a lot of people saying, cute demo. I love this bot, open sharing. Yes, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Lost Algorithm. This is really fun to build. And I see that we're almost at time, which is just amazing timing. Lizzie, do you have any parting thoughts before we wrap things up?
As Dave mentioned, you can make this a phone call, text message, Slack bot, Alexa bot, so many bots, like you build it once and make multiple bots across platforms. I do think this is very cute and it's very fun to build. It's just like, it's funny, I guess, like different things that divide programmers. But I think this bot itself is very uniting, so.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Lizzie, for joining us today. This has been a really fun session about how to integrate IBM and Twilio to do 3 different smart integrations. Thank you, everybody, for attending and asking questions and telling us when there were technical issues. Thank you, Gabriella, and for doing all the technical stuff behind the scenes. And thank you, Jennifer Atkins, for helping facilitate all of our partner workshops. Feel free to subscribe to our channels. If you're on Crowdcast, there's a little follow button up there at the top. But hopefully we will see you again soon on one of our IBM Developer platforms. And hopefully Lizzie will join us. We'll have a lot more fun.
Yes, Dave, we need to make something else.
Let's do it. Awesome. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks again.
Bye.